Hey, welcome everyone. My name is Bill Fanning. I'm a part of the team here at Talk. We are in the process of just giving a second or two for everyone to come in. Excited that you could all make time to be here today. It's an awesome topic. I'm really excited to discuss it and hear how people are using it. So, as always, if you are in a position to turn your camera on, it's great because we can see you and it's a little bit more of a connection capability. But if you can't, completely understand, it's up to you. And we'll give it like maybe 2 more minutes, and then we'll be off to the races. So I'm excited. And I don't know, is anybody on this call going to be attending HR Tech next week in Las Vegas? If you are, just raise your hand. I didn't know if anyone was going to be able to make it. We will be there. So, all right. Well, I guess not. All right. Well, unfortunate to see that. I was trying to organize a reason to have a fancy dinner on the company. So the more people I can get to come, the fancier the dinner can be. So, it's all about budget management. Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm going to get going. So again, my name's Bill Fanning, part of the team here at Talk. Really excited you can make time to be here, and really excited that Mark and Pillar are here because I know, and we've talked about in some of our past sessions, interview intelligence and what is that and how to take advantage of it. So excited for the discussion and hopefully have a really interactive dialogue around this. Hang on. There we go. So just a couple quick things I wanted to go over, take 2 seconds. One, anyone who made time to come join our board discussions this week, I just wanted to thank you. We're really excited about the opportunity to build out our community deeper and have more activities, and your feedback and participation. I couldn't ask for more. So I was super excited. I'm really, really energetic in terms of what we're going to be able to accomplish. I already asked about RecTech. We are going to be launching a reviews contest for our vendor marketplace. Anyone who goes in and does a review will have the ability to win a soon-to-be designed Talk t-shirt. Well, it is designed, but I think I did a really bad job, so I'm hiding it. I'm not going to pin that one to the fridge. So, but the cool thing is, if you take a picture of yourself in the t-shirt and put it on LinkedIn, we're going to run a contest to be able to see you on LinkedIn. Just mention Talk, and we will randomly pick winners for some really cool prizes. So I think it'll be a really exciting contest. We're going to run for the month of October, and it's going to be great. We have some great new speakers for our Halloween podcast, What's Scary in HR in 2025. So Ben Eubanks from Lighthouse Advisors is going to join us, and Joel Cheeseman from the Chad and Cheese podcast is going to join us. And he promised not to wear a mask because, quite frankly, he's scary enough. Let's put that on the table. And then we're having a breakfast next Thursday in San Francisco. So if anyone's in San Francisco and would like to come for breakfast, just let me know and be excited to have you join us. So with that, that's our updates. I wanted to introduce Mark Simpson. He's founder and CEO of Pillar, and it's an organization. He's actually spoken in our environment before. I was really excited to hear him. And one of the things that I love, because I always love to read websites and find really cool statements that resonate with me. This statement really resonates with me because I wholeheartedly believe that in a lot of ways, the interview process is broken. And that I'm glad to see that some other people recognize it and they're on a mission to fix it. So with that, I'm going to shut my screen share off, turn this over to Mark, and we can have a great discussion. So Mark, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here. And thanks everyone for joining and listening. We're looking forward to the next hour or so. Really appreciate you guys joining in as well. Interestingly, like highlighted as a roundtable. So I would love to get some discussion if we can around this. So please feel free at any point to kind of shout out anything that that you have, or any questions you have, or anything that you might want me to dive in deeper on. But yeah, thank you very much. We'll get into it. I put up a different kind of title for this than on a mission to fix it, because we do believe in Pillar that every candidate has a superpower. And we also believe that talent acquisition teams do a fantastic job in uncovering great candidates that ultimately don't end up getting hired. And one of the largest areas, as Bill sort of suggested in that, is when candidates get through to lines of business and they start going into this black box that is the interview and don't come out the other side. The question is, what's going on there, and what's happening? So we're going to uncover a little bit of what interview intelligence can do around that today. To introduce myself, I'm Mark Simpson. So I'm the founder and CEO of Pillar. I've founded now 3 companies over the last 18 or so years in my career, all of which the common theme about my companies, I guess, they've all been in B2B software companies, but they've all had a very sort of heavy reliance on machine learning back in the day, in 2006, and AI. And how to apply machine learning and AI to empower the users of our platforms to do better jobs. And that's what we do with Pillar. So excited to get in. I thought I would start actually with a question. We're going to talk about interviews today, and I wanted to hear from you on any recent projects that you've implemented to improve your interview process. What areas have you been focused on, if you've touched on anything in the interview process itself? So shout out, give me some love.
I don't know if it's new, but we use structured processes to create interview plans.
Love it. Love it.
A bunch of people jumping in chat. So Crystal mentioned they're using Calendly for self-scheduling.
Yep.
Lucy Potts, they're limiting the number of interviewers, which, by the way, I think is awesome.
Love that.
Jennifer Moulton said they're role-playing scenarios for digital sales roles. As a longtime hiring manager for sales, that's awesome as well.
Yep.
Aniki said they're including more assessments, business cases, and technical skills. Crystal mentioned they're using AI assistants for creating interview questions.
Love that.
And yeah, that's interesting because the candidates are now using AI to answer them.
Yep.
Leah said they're using Honeit to reduce the number of interviews needed, and a predictive index assessment tool. Oh, and I missed one. And Diana is implementing a 30, 60, 90-day plan for managing people coming in.
Love that. Love that. And I think it looks like people are still coming. Keep putting it in the chat if you don't want to sort of shout it out. But yeah, obviously some key work. Interesting research out there of the perfect number of interviews in order to hire someone, and I think people are settled around kind of 4 interview stages in total as kind of like the ideal for the majority of a professional, or all these terrible words, professional white collar knowledge worker hiring. Obviously less if you get into the hourly worker side of things, but limiting the number of interviews to make sure the process is fast but satisfying is key. And actually having some kind of skills test or scenario as part of those is actually really good. So glad that people have been kind of diving in and doing that as well. So any more that we want to shout out from the chat? Got continuing with virtual interviews versus in person for speed and consistency. I think that's fairly common, actually, Lucy. That's great. And I think a good thing to do. I think what we're seeing from our customer base is if they're going back to in person, it's for final stages, maybe the final kind of one or 2 candidates. So that's awesome. All right, well, let's get into a little bit around interview intelligence itself. And I wanted to start by just taking you back and recognizing what you've all been through over the last sort of, let's say, 5 years. And then we'll get into some of the trends that have been reshaping interviewing. And then if anyone can guess what the 2 letters are that I'm going to speak about, there's no medals for this one because I think it's probably fairly obvious. It's what everybody's talking about all the time. But I've been working in the space for quite a while now. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the application of AI through the interview process as well.
The universe has changed forever. We recruit talent in a post-COVID, DEI-focused world with employees more empowered than ever. A remote-first world presents a strategic opportunity for recruiting and staffing firms to outperform their competition. Our goal at Pillar is to help you get the right candidates to your clients faster and increase the productivity of your consultants. Here's how we help your team maximize recruiter efficiency, speed up candidate placements, and accelerate revenue growth. Even before you start searching for candidates, we integrate with your current tools, your ATS, video conferencing, and scheduling to provide a seamless addition to your recruiting tech stack. Imagine being able to interview a candidate without having to take notes. Pillar records and transcribes interviews, so you can focus on the candidate and go back and review later. Then, instead of spending hours per week on candidate write-ups, you can use Pillar to generate highlight reels from your interviews and share them with your clients. This way, your client gets everything they need to choose the best candidates faster. And finally, Pillar's interview analytics will quickly train your new recruiters so they can deliver results immediately. Our customers are seeing great results. They're submitting and placing candidates significantly faster, increasing their revenue, and using video interviews as a competitive differentiator. Ready to be able to take on more roles for your clients? Set up time to chat with a Pillar expert today at pillar.hr.
First off, just a little bit of recognition as to where we are now, because sometimes it's kind of important to like sit back and take stock as to what's changed from, pre-pandemic, which seems like, for me, like more than 5 years ago now. It feels like a lifetime ago that we were, mainly in office, and, our whole working environments were very, very different. But we think about that and apply that to interviews where, almost 100% of interviews, 90% of interviews were face-to-face. Two people went into a room, they had a conversation, and one person would come out the other side and say, I like them or not. The pandemic really shook everything up. They shook our whole world up, and even the pandemic for me feels like a long, long time ago. I don't know what it feels like for you. But now we're in this environment which is totally different. But that pandemic for us, and when I say us, I mean sort of me personally and founding Pillar, the Pillar team, has allowed us to go within interviews from an area where we had no real clue what the conversation was, to all interviews being on Zoom or Teams or whatever video platform that there was over that period. And for someone who's been working in machine learning and AI for 17 years, the ability to understand those interview conversations, what's happening, candidate skills, and the ability to try and help empower talent acquisition teams improve that process. So we've come out the other side now with the ability to dramatically change and improve a process that previously we haven't really been able to touch on. The reason we focused on the interview, so I'm very fortunate in my career that I've had a couple of sort of large companies that we've built, and then time off in between them to reflect. And I honestly believe that people are the most important part of a business, and building skill sets and building teams is just one of those areas where if we can do things to improve that, we dramatically improve a business productivity, the way it works, the culture, and all of those elements. We can monetize that in terms of how long it takes to interview and how much it costs companies in interviewing time and so on and so forth. But ultimately, when I was thinking about, where could we put the biggest business improvement into a company across any area, marketing, engineering, HR, whatever it might be, I actually honed in on talent acquisition and the interview process specifically, because talent acquisition teams have been fantastic at generating candidates and generating pipeline. But as those candidates get into those lines of business, then the candidates start falling out. Nobody really knows what's happening, or historically, no one's really known what's happening, the reasons why, and how to improve the process. So we're really focused on that interview, everything from the intake, that first interview, right the way through to selection and actually hiring the right person. I'm going to show you a little bit of what we mean by that. But ultimately, we're here to eradicate some of the bad behaviors that we see. And these are real things that we've pulled from applicant tracking systems that we've seen over the last few years, which some of them are just like amaze me. You know, the second largest electronics manufacturer in the world, literally in their ATS, they had the note of, they love dogs, I'm a strong yes on a candidate. I mean, how people can get away with that is quite incredible. But as soon as you hear, no, don't really like them, they're not really a cultural fit, alarm bells should be going up. And we hear these things all the time. But these just highlight, you know, how much of a struggle interviewing is for talent acquisition professionals when all you're really looking to do is hire the right people or the best people into the right roles. So I want to get into a few of the trends. You've actually started on, it's like some of you have started on some of these already, but there are a few kind of trends that we're sort of seeing in the interviewing space and in the interviewing intelligence space. The first one, I can't remember, I think it was Adam, you mentioned this, was just guiding your interviewers. We see this happening more and more now, where companies are implementing interview guides in order to do a few things. One is standardize the interview process, and make sure that candidates get a good experience and an experience where their skills can be compared against each other. The one area I would highlight around this is we've also seen a lot of teams attempt to guide interviewers. Producing Word documents of interview guides or that they send around beforehand, that then when we actually sort of see and record those interviews, we see them not being used. And what some of the areas where we help and kind of fix those things is just by making sure guides are served into interviews, so you're not creating a whole load of work and then it's falling flat on interviewers who are very busy, or they turn up to interviews without doing their prep or research or what have you, which happens all the time. But making sure not just that interview guides are created, which I think is a fundamental part of running a good interview process, but actually those guides are being used, and you can actually start guiding people to have conversations around skills or competencies, or your values or whatever you might be testing in that interview. Very big movement towards that we've seen, particularly in companies that are, you know, that are kind of mid-sized to some of the largest companies in the world. Happy to take kind of questions and what have you in the chat. Please feel free to kind of ask questions, show any support if you're doing things like guides, skills-based hiring, you know, what you're seeing as well. Would love the conversation to continue, or shout out at me if you have anything too. The second area that I wanted to just touch on is obviously a lot of press written about this, but just the move into skills-based hiring. And the ability to compare candidates around their skills, not based on, you know, their background or whether you like the candidate or whether they grew up in the same town or went to the same college, or, you know, all these areas where we see so many conversations around in interviews. And just having, you know, an ability to go into an interview, to rehear from candidates, to make sure their skills are being assessed in the right way, which come through the guides and making sure you're guiding interviewers, but then you're putting assessments against the skills that you're outlining for the role, is becoming more and more common and more fundamental to making sure that you're giving everybody a fair and equitable chance at getting that role. And for using predictive index and guides, I love it. We've used predictive index as well. It's a great tool. The third area to highlight is just everybody's talk about candidate experience, and I'll come to kind of the relationship with interviewing right now. I think the element that we've seen over the last few years, where kind of the candidate experience has been spoken about so much, is the needle has not moved in some of these statistics. The shocking element of candidates are still getting a bad experience. They share that experience when it is bad, much more so than when it's good. And candidates are just not being as included in the process as they would like, potentially, but not feeling like they're getting a good experience when they go into applying for roles. In interviews more specifically, we can actually understand now whether candidates have a good experience or a bad experience within the interview without surveying. There is, I can show you in a little bit later in this, but there is the ability with AI to understand the candidate's experience as the interview is going on, and just to uncover which interviewers need a little bit more coaching or training to give candidates a better experience, and which ones do that just as a matter of course. So that candidate experience, while it's been spoken about across the life cycle within talent acquisition, while stats haven't moved a ton, is now coming to within the interview and being able to understand whether candidates have a good experience actually in the interview itself and throughout the interview process.
Mark, can I ask a question there?
Yeah.
As you're moving on, I'd really be curious. So I love the fact that you say 38% of candidates are more likely to accept a job. But one of the things I think from my looking at data on this is that a positive candidate experience also dramatically impacts retention. That people come in with a better. So I'm curious, and just curious, anyone else in here as well, has anyone experienced that by improving their candidate experience, they've reduced turnover and created a better experience or onboarding experience because people come in happier?
I mean, I've noticed that anecdotally, and I measure that myself as a recruiter, as a quick and dirty kind of quality of hire, contentment kind of score. And I think I did, it was less than 1% attrition for candidates that I had personally hired as a recruiter. And I thought that was pretty good.
That's very impressive, Adam.
Thank you.
I have a question specifically about getting feedback from candidates after the interviewing process. I'm curious to hear what others are doing, how they implement it, and that was helpful to hear. What do you do with it, where you can then provide potential coaching to certain managers and things like that? Can we talk more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk more about that. Shall I pause for a moment and see what others are doing around getting candidate feedback? See if anyone else wants to chime in on that as well.
I can share. We have a forms survey that we send out to candidates and to hiring managers actually. And we use the feedback for coaching, whether it be the recruiters, the coordinators, or hiring managers. We check it probably once a month just to make sure we're getting some new data and keep it fresh.
That's great, Anthea. Holly's also saying in the chat that that their ATS sends out a survey as well.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? At what point in the recruiting process or interviewing process are people sending those out?
After panel interviews on our side.
I think Unza puts a very valid comment in the chat around sending surveys not just to those that get hired, but also those that did not get offered a role as well, to make sure that you're truly surveying the candidate population. I can't quite keep up with all the chat. This is fantastic.
Yeah, what we do is we have a link to a survey at the end, and transparently, if we feel like, if we get a sense that they did have a good experience, we'll ask them to fill it out. So it's a bit of a bias, but
we send ours out. We send it out through our ATS as well. We send it after they've met with the hire or gone through the first round of interviews. If they're dispositioned at that point, then they get the survey. And then if they go further and they get hired, then they get the survey after they've been hired. We also do it for our hiring managers. Very few of them fill it out. There are times where we ask the team to actually connect with their hiring managers just to see how the process is going. And I personally, as a recruiter, a lot of times will connect with the candidates just to find out what questions are being asked and what they liked about the process, what they didn't like about the process, just on my own.
Love that, Victoria. Well, I'm also these all great, and we've seen a lot of companies doing sort of surveys and basing it things also, which has traditionally been the very best way of getting feedback from candidates. I'll actually show you in a couple of slides time just a little bit of how AI can help with that as well, to give you kind of guidance as to who's doing good and bad interviews, or providing a good and bad candidate experience, I should say, within the interviews themselves. Really something so you can use real data and take action on it immediately. NPS, Melissa mentions, is fantastic. We use NPS a lot, and I think NPS is probably one of the simplest ways where you can get kind of scores around how good the process has been. All right, fantastic. Well, the last area I wanted to talk about, the trend that we've seen a lot of, really kind of sparked, I guess, probably more over the last 18 months. We've seen a real sort of move towards this, is just recording interviews. Understanding what's happening in the interviews and using interview recordings for various different purposes. We do see immediately as interviews get recorded, people sit up and become much more accountable within their interviews. They think about their interview more or as an interviewer in being recorded. We also see candidates not bothered whatsoever about being recorded. Obviously, candidates can opt out of being recorded at any point from interviews. We actually monitor opt-out rates through the Pillar platform. I think our opt-out rates right now are 0.04% now, and they keep coming down every quarter. But candidates are used to being recorded, and it's really starting to hold interviewers accountable when interviews are recordings. And then there's lots of benefits in the process around candidate selection about being recorded as well. And that sort of side-by-side comparison and replay of candidate skills and the like can really help hiring managers make better decisions. And hiring managers actually love the ability to be able to sort of hear from the candidates again, even if they weren't in that interview, from their interview teams. I wanted to ask maybe a quick poll from the audience here. I think Bill oh, there we go. Here we have a poll. A poll should have popped up on your Zoom with the question here: are you recording your interviews? So let's just have a look and see who's recording their interviews.
Okay, 10 more seconds if you want to get in.
While we're doing the results, there was a question that popped up from Shannon: is recording or videoing interviews successful no matter the level of the role? For example, a laborer versus like a senior financial analyst. So and that's a great question, because obviously there's different focus on the interview. So maybe while we're waiting for the poll to finish, Mark, you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we see the applications of recorded live interviews happen really everywhere from kind of C-suite down to graduate hiring, where we see it more applied is within sort of a permanent workforce. The typical more maybe office-based roles we see as kind of the sweet spot for recording interviews. Where it's tougher to do and not used as much is a little bit more in the hourly workers. So we don't see it for people recruiting bar staff or people working in stores or what have you. So it's a little bit less used on that side of things, but really within an organization, right the way wherever there is a live interview, and the interview and the choice between candidates is a considered decision, having that recording and the ability to replay interviews can provide a lot of benefit. Great question. Thank you, Shannon.
Okay. All right. Are you able to see the results there?
Love it. That doesn't surprise me. For the 16% who said yes, what do you use the recordings for? What do you do with your recordings? I would love for somebody to shout out and just sort of give me an example of what you do with your recordings.
I'm using it currently. I actually had a hand injury. So it was a lifesaver. It kept me from having to type all the time. And I'm a very good listener, and I feel like it's caused me to listen more closely to the interview and not be so caught up in trying to get my notes down. Number one, I also use it for my intakes as well. We do not use it with our hiring managers. I'm the only one on the recruitment team that's currently using it.
Love that, Victoria. Very, very, very common use case. People are recording their interviews just to get them written up afterwards, because it takes all of the manual work out of that. And if you think it takes you, I don't know, 10 minutes to write up an interview into your ATS after every interview you do, or every interview your recruiters do, it can save a dramatic amount of time out of your calendar over a week. We're seeing average recruiters save somewhere between 5 and 10 hours a week by recording and having automated write-ups or automated summaries of their interviews. So Victoria, love that example. Anyone else? Anyone doing anything different with their recordings?
So we use it to help, like Victoria mentioned, to help just generate those AI notes so we can truly just focus on the conversation versus having to worry about what we're typing out. And we also use it to help educate our hiring managers and anyone that's interviewing in the hiring team, so they can become better interviewers. I guess an example of that is they can go back to their AI notes and see if they were consistent and standardized within their questioning, if they probed in the correct areas, all to just kind of maintain and help with that standardized and consistent interviewing process.
That's fantastic, Holly. Absolutely love that. Yeah, I mean, we do see the first part of your answer. We do see people being way more attentive when their heads aren't written like down like this. If I was presenting down like this and writing notes or what have you, and trying to take it all in, just listening to the candidates, asking better questions, asking deeper questions where needed, it just naturally happens when you don't have to do another task within an interview, and then. Holly, using it for training, I think is fantastic. It's so few interviewers have actually had any interview training. I think getting feedback and getting training around interviews makes such a big difference to the quality of their interviews, and actually then the quality of hire coming out of the back of that as well.
I have a question for the group. We're just about ready to test out optional video intakes once we reach out to qualified candidates, in lieu of doing a phone screen with a recruiter, to give them the option. Has anybody tried that, and is there success with it?
What was the first part of that? Optional what?
To allow them to do it optionally. So I won't require a candidate to submit video answers that they record themselves and upload to the system. But I'll provide them maybe with 5 different questions that they can do their own videos on, do retakes if they need to, but giving them the option to do that, or to schedule a live conversation with us and not requiring them to do the video.
Interesting.
Anyone tried that, tested it out?
We use it we use HireVue for certain roles, and it works better in our sales environment than any other department that we have. Salespeople are used to being on and like to be on, where a lot of other people just kind of bypass it. They're not interested.
We have a number of our customers also using HireVue for those kind of one-way interviews. Works really well where people are just hard to get hold of and want to answer questions on their own time. Works very well with nurses and hospital workers. Works very well with hourly workers, laborers and the like as well. It's less successful the more senior you go. We've certainly seen sort of less success as you go up in terms of job title. I think there was. Yeah, Karen.
Oh, I was just going to say that I agree with that. We've used HireVue in the past as well. It's a great tool for sure, but we had mixed success with it. Definitely some areas that had us leaning away from it is, almost managers using it against their own benefit, where it's like, well, it was a little awkward. The candidate was, looking away, and I'm like, well, looking away, well, they were looking up, and I'm like, well, then you're not going to have the eye contact that you're looking for. HireVue isn't going to get you that because the candidates are looking at their screen, they aren't looking at their cameras.
We're probably going to the next section. I'll try and answer a few of the things coming through in the chat. Norman, I don't know whether this is possible to put up another poll, but Adam's asking us to see how many people are actually typing notes into an ATS during the interview versus writing them up afterwards. So maybe if you can set that up, let us know. In the meantime, to give you time to do that, I'll see if I can answer a couple of questions coming in. Anthea is asking here whether it's safe to assume candidates have opted into being recorded. I think that's actually fairly important. I mean, GDPR and other regulations actually require candidates to opt into being recorded. So you shouldn't be recording interviews if that hasn't been the case. We do kind of an email send out before to a candidate just explaining why interviews are being recorded. The vast majority of our customers will do that. And once you explain to a candidate that that your company believes in fair and equitable interviewing and you want them to represent themselves in their own voice as they go through the process, actually we see feedback from candidates is very, very positive. Actually, feedback from diverse candidates extremely positive if they know they're sort of representing themselves in their own voice rather than having a conversation and then being represented by someone else. And then as soon as you get into Teams or Zoom or whatever system you use, there will be that sort of opting into being recorded there as well. As I say, opt-out rates, we measure that 0.04%, I think at the moment for us. So really small. So like 1 out of every 2,500 interviews, I think we see something like that.
We can launch that poll whenever you want.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Thank you, Norman. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything for you, Adam. All right, we got about half in. Give it about 15 more seconds.
While we're doing that, Lisa, I think your question here on kind of compliance agreements for the candidate, that's similar, just they just need to opt into being recorded. That's really the only compliance that they need.
Okay. The results are in.
We got actually almost even split. Slightly more doing it during the interview than afterwards. Obviously going for those time savings. I'd be amazed if anywhere near sort of 55% of your interview team, once you get into hiring managers and the interview team are typing into ATSs. I would imagine that would be very low numbers. And if you've got any doing that, then that would be job well done and well trained on your part. All right. Well, looking at time, I wanted to go through a little bit around AI. It's just such a big topic. I've worked in machine learning AI, as I said, for 18 or so years now. And have applied AI into software platforms, the purpose of which to try and help our users do a better job in each of the companies that I've grown. So I thought I would just touch on a few areas in which we see AI being applied within the interview process. And really, some of you may be doing this at the moment, some of you may not. People are at various stages of learning about AI. But I thought it worth highlighting a few of the different things that can be done, and happy to have a bit of a discussion around that to see what people are doing and see what people's thoughts are. Before I start, why don't we shout out who is using AI in the hiring process? Let's maybe I'm happy to have it as the hiring process. If anyone is using AI in the interview process, I'd be even more keen to hear from you. But what are you using it for? So can anyone shout out and give me some context as to how you're using AI in your hiring process? Adam, we've got a yes. Optimizing job descriptions into postings. Yeah, love that, Crystal. Summarizing screening notes. So summarizing screening notes, Deanna, I'm assuming you're writing your notes, putting it into a large language model, and it's coming out with a summary. Public job descriptions, yeah. Transcriptions, using I'm assuming that's Teams Copilot to transcribe phone screens, summarize those. Creating interview questions, love that, Crystal. There's actually, if you need the ability to do that, you can go onto the pillar.hr website. We've got a free tool for everyone that wants to create job descriptions from your interview guides. If anyone wants to use that, we do quite a bit actually within Pillar just to try and help move the market forward and show what is possible, and we'll put as much out for free as we can. So that's in the resources part of the Pillar website. Jennifer, job descriptions, pre-screen questions, questions for hiring managers during intake. Love it. All right. Lots around interview questions. That's good. Generating text for outreach, Adam. Haven't seen that one from others, but love that. Grading resumes against job descriptions. Crystal, that's that you're diving into AI more than some others there. That's fantastic. Taking notes, so on and so forth. All right. Okay. Awesome. All right. And Alexa, my colleague Alexa has actually put a couple of resources in that that uses AI that can maybe help you in your day-to-day work. Just free resources that we put out if it's of any help to you. Well, there's a few things that we can do. Obviously, we have AI that can create job descriptions. AI that can grade those job descriptions. So we're thinking like applying AI to an intake meeting before we get to interviews. I'm not going to do anything more top of funnel really than focusing on what we do around interviews. There are many other experts that Talk has on here that do that. But you know, just making sure that job descriptions are graded before being put out, and you're putting out good quality job descriptions. A few people have mentioned it, but very common now to start creating interview guides from those job descriptions. Within Pillar, we actually have a step-by-step, what I call a wizard for intake meetings, which just take you through. You can put in your job description. It spits out you know, really good kind of interview questions. You can very easily kind of drag and drop those to who should be asking those questions into interviews, and then we serve them up in the interviews themselves. So, you know, AI can really take what has been a process which can be fairly laborious and just take that and turn it into something that takes minutes rather than many minutes or hours. So at the front end, before you even get into an interview, there's quite a lot that AI can actually do to help you out. As you start getting into the interview itself, you know, we've heard automating interview summaries, automating kind of feedback collection, creating those pieces of text that you want to you know, send out to hiring managers, which gives an overview as to the candidate and why you're moving them forward. All of that can be automated really well now. You can go out and put your notes into large language models and get summaries of them. You know, you can do some of those things for free, just using GPTs and what have you. You can go out, you don't need to pay for a platform like Pillar. Where a platform like Pillar comes in is just having those summaries written in the right way, in a way where you can just copy and paste. There's less editing. That is also syncs with your applicant tracking system, so things are all kind of put into the right places in the right systems of record, and so on with that. But actually using AI to pay attention for you, so can take that part of that note-taking attention away, and you can spend more time paying attention to candidates, as we heard from a few of you that discussed that a little earlier. A couple of areas which you may not have thought of, and a couple of areas that hopefully will spark a little bit of thought, maybe a little bit of discussion in the time we have left. It's possible to use, and Pillar can turn this on or off for customers. It's possible to use AI to understand the actual conversation and areas for coaching within the interview itself. So, for example, we have AI that can detect whether there's potential bias in an interview. And that could be bias around really obvious stuff. You know, did somebody ask questions around the protected characteristics? To actually much more subtle biases that come in. For example, did you, I don't know, speak for 15 minutes about your favorite football team with the candidate, where actually you were supposed to spend the 10 minutes of those 15 after an introduction, like digging into that candidate's skills and competencies for the role. So AI can actually now start surfacing some of this and start helping interviewers by giving feedback to interviewers on how they can improve their interviews and how they can make them fairer, more equitable interviews going forward. The other sort of more advanced strand of AI is actually taking something that was developed for another industry and looking at the candidate experience within the interview itself. So there is a strand of AI called sentiment analytics, which is used very commonly in call centers. So if you call a call center mad because the product you have is broken and not working anymore, there is generally very, very commonly AI in the background, just sort of analyzing your sentiment and feeding that back to the person on the other end to see whether they need to calm you down or whether everything's okay, and so on and so forth. Well, we've repurposed some of that. I actually worked with the IBM Watson team when I was at IBM on sentiment back in 2016, and we've repurposed some of that to apply it to interviews. The purpose of which is to just understand which interviewers give a really good experience to candidates within the interviews themselves, and which ones maybe need a little bit more coaching. And the results are actually quite surprising. We had one customer who has a rock star engineer, like their best engineer that they were putting in to interview every candidate they could, and candidates were coming out the other side and just not taking roles. Now, you can start seeing that if you look for long enough, over enough data, over months and months, you would probably realize that yourselves. But actually, we could recognize that within the first couple of interviews, give that interviewer more coaching so they can provide a better experience for candidates, and actually candidates will go through the process and accept roles. We can actually break this down into parts of conversation, but I don't think we'll go there today. That gets very, very advanced. So we'd love to get kind of any kind of thoughts and questions, like some very simple applications of AI, some of the things you're doing already, some maybe that spark a little bit of thought or a little bit of question on some of the more advanced elements of AI that can be applied within interviews themselves.
Hey, Mark, what about the same idea, but giving that feedback to candidates?
Yeah, so expand on that, Adam. What are you envisaging there?
Well, what I've been thinking about a lot for the last year is the fact that recruiters, recruitment agencies, companies are in this unique position to give more value back to applicants.
Yep.
But virtually no one does. Candidates are lucky to get an email saying they weren't selected. So literally the only candidate that gets value is the one that gets an offer, and that offer is the value.
Yep.
So there's a lot of meat left on the bone. So in this case, like telling the candidate, how long did you talk continuously without taking a break? You could use the sentiment analysis. Like, you said that you liked the company and the role, but the sentiment analysis says that you're not sold on it. Or, these are the top skills that you talked about, and they're not on target for the roles that you interviewed for.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so we've spoken about this a lot as a product team within the organization, because part of Pillar, as you've seen from the title, part of Pillar is obviously in supporting companies and the jobs that you do, but we have a very large thread within Pillar to support candidates as well, and that comes through obviously with the fair and equitable interviewing that we're trying to implement, but also we discuss what more we can do there. Unfortunately, we don't do that right now. What you're describing, Adam, is something that we have spoken about, but we're a 4-year-old company, and our customers are demanding more products and what have you, and we're pumping those out as on a daily, weekly, and a monthly basis. I do love that direction though. I look at the market quite a lot. I haven't found a company who does that yet.
Yeah.
It's a hard and sensitive area because you want to make sure that there are controls around that and that candidates are getting the right feedback. So I would say we would need human control on top of whatever AI produces right now. Just knowing how AI works and how that could come out. But I do think that's a valuable thing that we will likely do in the future.
Nice. Yeah, because I definitely, on the surface of it, it does feel like a B2C type of movement or motion.
Very much so.
It's easily B2B2C. I think I've never worked as an agency recruiter or owned a recruitment agency, but I could definitely see that as possibility to differentiate that agency to attract more prospects to engage with them and interview with them.
That's very true, and Diana gives the counter to that a little bit, and actually represents some of the conversations that we've had with our enterprise customers, in that legal teams fear giving more feedback. The less you give, the better, which is unfortunate, because the candidate does get a better experience, and I think it takes a more bold, maybe talent acquisition team to fight against that, and I think it's a possible is the ability to stand out amongst other companies and peers in doing so, but it is tough. Sometimes it is tough to get around those legal conversations.
Yeah, I think Bill and Norman, we could have a whole discussion, a whole session on providing feedback. You know what I mean? Because in the 6.5 years I've been in recruiting, I heard that from the very beginning, and honestly, it's very cynical. Obviously, it's rooted in reality. Otherwise, people wouldn't talk about it. But to me, maybe I'm missing something, but you could very easily get around that by having someone sign a document.
Yeah, or having an opt-in process during the interview that, hey, if you don't get the job, do you want feedback?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Adam, did you just volunteer to lead that discussion?
I already wrote that down, and it's done. So welcome to Adam's call next Thursday.
Thanks.
So a couple great, a great question from Crystal that I think is really interesting, that it would be interesting if a candidate came to the table asking if they could record their interview for their own personal learnings.
Yeah, we've certainly seen candidates put software on there to take notes for them. So note-taking software, and asked to upload note-taking software. There was one interesting case where a prospective customer came to us, and the situation they had was a candidate had recorded the interview without the interviewer knowing, and was coming at the company with some grievances against the interview. And while that may not be admissible in court, it kind of goes a little bit beside the point when the legal team gets involved. But the legal team did not have their own version of the truth. And they came to Pillar to actually start implementing Pillar, because they knew that they needed to know what happened, and more than just the interviewer sort of giving their versions of it, which may not have matched up with what the versions that the candidate was saying. So really sort of interesting case that happened there. I don't think it's common at all. That sort of thing. We've only heard of one case of that specifically, but I think actually having meetings, we've seen recorded meetings in sales for years and years. Recorded meetings for interviews have really kind of spiked and on a massive growth curve right now. I think recordings are just going to become a common part of day-to-day living. I'm going to end there, but I wanted to end actually with a little bit of an offer, and happy to sort of answer any questions or facilitate any more discussion around interview intelligence here as well. Bill asked me to, or asked us to put a bit of an offer together. So we kind of went away and sat back and was like, what's the best thing that we could provide to a community like Talk? And very much value, being on here and having the ability to be part of a community. So we actually sort of took a step that we haven't done before in giving you the opportunity to try Pillar for free. We'll probably have this ready to go in probably by 1st of October, some a sort of a trial version of our interview intelligence platform. But I put a QR code. If you're interested in trying Pillar for free, scan that code. It'll take you through to sign up, and we can provide more details around trialing Pillar after this. So we've taken a bit of a bold step to try and give you some of the value we give to very high-paying customers for free as we go forward.
That's awesome. One question I have, Mark, that maybe you could spend a minute and see if anyone else wants to step in and have the same concern. When you're using these AI engines to evaluate job descriptions, candidate resumes, what are some of the things that our members should be thinking about when evaluating vendors who offer services like that, to maintain the fact that they're not going to create a situation legally or ethically down the road. Could you spend a couple seconds on that? I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, we're in a we work in a very sensitive area. Ultimately we are influencing people's careers, influencing people's lives by either giving them offers and hearing from them in an interview process and what have you, or not. So we have to take that role and responsibility very, very, very seriously. AI is improving at such a phenomenal rate, sort of general AI, large language models, ChatGPT, and what have you, is improving at such a phenomenal rate that actually you could go on to ChatGPT and use it for a number of different purposes now that work. But you could do it, if you do so, please don't do it without a decent amount of human control, double checking, reading through, all of those elements. When you come to a vendor and a software platform, they should be doing all of those controls for you. So trying to take a look at the quality of their outputs before you sign on with them, I think is a really good sort of test of their capabilities, because I mean, we work with some of the largest enterprises in the world. If we made one mistake, we'd be in a lot of trouble. If we made two mistakes, we'd be kicked out. So we have to put a lot of thought, a lot of additional coding on top of any large language model that we would use, and train our own models on top of that in order to get the right output to create good quality interview guides, good quality questions, good summaries that take into account people's preferences for pronouns and all those elements that can really sort of trip up sort of more generic AI. So bit of advice. One is just, if you can do any kind of testing of outputs of the vendors that you're speaking to, I would do that. Asking how their models are trained and on what data sets and for how long, and their reliance. They need to be open with things like that. I'll tell you right now that we cannot transcribe an interview perfectly yet, because there isn't technology out there that transcribes interviews, any conversation perfectly. In English, we get to 99.5 or 99.9% accuracy in most parts. In other languages, it actually starts degrading from that to kind of 95%, which is where you start noticing problems with transcription. So if vendors are telling you that everything's perfect, then that should raise suspicion and be cause for you to dig it a little bit deeper. I'm just very honest. I'm very, very open and very honest. And I wouldn't want you to. I think other vendors mislead a little bit sometimes. So just digging in and making sure if something sounds suspicious, make sure you dig in further.
Awesome. That's so that was one of my questions. I've always loved to discuss that with people. Any last minute questions for the group or for Mark or for me? Anything we can help with? Happy to tackle it. Well, Mark, you did that good of a job. You left him speechless. It's powerful. Yeah. Well done.
Speechless at 2 minutes before the top of the hour, but maybe just for 30 seconds, Bill, before we come in. I just want to say a huge thank you. Thank you to everyone here for having me on this. Thank you, Bill, Norman, for inviting me. Thank you for everyone's engagement as well. I love to have a bit of a conversation with this, and you certainly brought it and provided it. So thank you to everyone for having me within this roundtable. Yeah, Bill, over to you.
Yeah, awesome. Everyone, as always, great discussion. Critical, important topic that I think is going to continue to evolve and grow, and I think Mark's on the forefront of that. So I'm really glad he could come and share his thoughts and kind of give us some feedback. And if we will obviously be sending this out via email shortly after with the recording of it. So love that you're all here. Great session. Again, any questions, let us know, and any feedback, be awesome. And guys, thank you very much. I appreciate everyone making time in their day to come participate in this event with us. It means a lot, and it's definitely not overlooked. So with that, we're going to shut it down on the webinar front. Thank you again, everyone, very much for your time, and we'll see you soon.